Airplane mode.
I don't know. On phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want their leader brought here. I want him brought to me. I want the revolution crushed.
Actually, it might be easier for you if you your headphone, if you switch it out so the wire's on this side instead of that side. Yeah, so it doesn't get your.
But it doesn't. It says R.
Yeah, it's not. It's
Does
just
it
gonna
matter?
get in his way because the microphone's right here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, don't worry. There you go. That was the silent microphone.
Sorry, I'm late.
Well, it's okay. We're shooting the breeze.
We will make you pay with comedy.
Comedy and cake, cheesecake.
When do you
That's
fly
Plaza.
out?
Oh, is that cheesecake?
It's Biscoff cheesecake.
Biscoff is my favorite, bro.
Toast.
It's from yesterday. It's like
Oh, I thought it was from today.
My wife's friend made
I was
it
joking.
yesterday.
Your wife made it?
My wife's friend.
Wow.
What's her name?
What's her name? You mean the company name?
Because I know. Well, sure, whatever. Like, because I know that's a thing now. Biscoff.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show. My name is Sim. Along with me is Jehan
Assalamu alaikum.
and Blast from the Past. I'm my main man returning to
Assalamu
studio.
Uh-oh.
Mahin Islam.
One of the
Welcome to
goats,
the show.
OG goats.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And the man of the hour, Adeel J. Welcome.
Fourth visit to Mad Mamluks. Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah, wow,
Number
he's
4.
Only four?
Like Shaq's rings.
Oh.
Yeah.
How was your Eid? Did you do the sacrifice?
I sent the sacrifice to a school in overseas, but yeah, we had quite the blast. This Ramadan was super chill, man.
Yeah?
Alhamdulillah, it was really nice.
I did my first. Well, I took my son to his first Udhiya Qurbani.
The Joliet one, a lot of people going to Joliet.
No, this was in Woodstock.
Woodstock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this farm, it was legit. There was a lot of baby goats, and you get to play with them a little bit before you kill them. I'm more like non-committal if it was mine. My son's like getting all up with the goats and becoming
little too
friends with-
friendly.
just friendly, and
Just
I'm like
too difficult then.
I'm like, this is a business transaction here. We're not here to be friends. You're going to be meat soon. I would have been like, let's just get to pick the goat at the last second. And it would just business
awesome.
gets done. I love animals.
Yeah.
I don't want to get attached to it before killing it. So my son, he was just like, he was having a lot of fun with it. It was really cool. He sacrificed a goat.
Mashallah.
Yeah.
A lot of people there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Some of those get really crowded.
Yeah, there
Really
were,
bloody.
Yeah, at least I think there were at least 100 goats there that all got slaughtered that day. So
Adeel, you look a little uncomfortable with this conversation. Did blood make you faint or something?
Yeah, I mean, so we were in Pakistan one summer, and my cousins and I, and when you're Pakistani American, your parents insulate you to the compound of the house. So we had each other, the cousins meaning, and we had the goats. So goats were our friends. We named the goats, we hung out with them, and then one day we go to the back, and one of the dudes is cutting it, and it's vibrating, and the blood's gushing out, and you're killing our friends.
Were you under 10 years old at this time?
I likely was.
Yeah.
Oh,
gonna
really?
That's going to
And
be a little rough.
I still have. It's
Yeah.
traumatic.
I see what you're saying.
well, they scream like human beings.
They sound like human
They
beings.
sound like
Yeah.
human beings when they're screaming, and you're
so
like,
sad.
the first time I saw it when I was young, I remember just going back up into our bedroom. This was in India. We were there for a vacation, and the sacrifice came up. I just went up. I just felt like the blood in my head just falling, and I just went lay down in my room, and I was just like, this is so freaking insane.
Yeah.
Because they're still like chopping up the goat still up like in the front yard of the house. It was
There's
really
blood
wild.
everywhere.
It's blood everywhere, and then they're cleaning out the guts,
Yeah.
and it stinks really bad because they don't waste anything over there. Well, at least I don't think they do.
They don't
There's
waste
no waste
nothing?
here. They don't waste here either. I think.
Yeah.
Everything's sold to
Your
someone.
brain.
I did it with Shirazi.
Oh,
And he was like, "Yo, the liver, that's the best part, dude."
I hate liver.
I remember
Yeah.
when we were in Egypt, man, they just do it all out in the open in front of people's houses, and there was like little like a calf, like
Yeah.
a bull, and you're usually supposed to have like a team of guys help you do it. Like family thought they could do it on their own, and the thing got loose and it started running. We just dispersed. I was there with my wife too.
Wait, with
bro.
the head was hanging around?
No, they didn't even cut it yet.
Oh,
And it was like kicking and this and that, and they couldn't even catch it. Eventually, like I think the police, like they brought it back and stuff, and it was crazy. But that can get really. And they're all laughing while they're running. It's not like they're scared.
Oh,
I was
calves are
scared.
laughing?
No, the
kids.
people
Oh.
and everybody. Like, oh, it's just like trying to hit people and get out of the way. And you know when if they hit you, bro, it's still,
I wonder if that's like the
Mongol
Mongol when the Mongols slaughtered people, like the blood running through the streets. Is that what it looks like?
Probably blood. This guy is churning. Look at this guy. He's like, what the heck am I doing
I'm
here?
just tuned out for this conversation now. Come back in.
Well, Adeel, you recently went to had an incredibly surreal journey. When you described it to me, I'm like, we had to talk about it. I can't believe we missed it in our last show.
Yeah,
you had gone to Rwanda.
Yeah.
What even led to this trip, and why did you go?
Subhanallah, it's very interesting because for some reason I find not joy, but I find a lot of fulfillment in visiting places and studying places that have had genocide there. And so Rwanda was one place that I had not gone and visited in person.
Like, you want to understand the people, or
I want to understand how it happened.
How do you get past
what
it?
happened, right? And every place that I had been, nobody had healed from the genocide.
Yeah,
it's continuously there's something still, there's tension, there's still but anyway, so at the time I didn't know that they healed in Rwanda.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of this when I wanted to go. So I'm in the bathroom one day here in Chicago, when I was living here in Chicago, and I was like, I just really would like to go to Rwanda. The next day I get an email in my inbox.
Wow.
It's from the Auburn Theological Seminary, and it's U.S. based, and in the East Coast. And so they were like, we're looking for scholars to come on this trip, religious scholars to come on this trip to study Rwanda, and they would pay for everything. And I said, okay, well, this sounds it's very kind of scary, but because I just was thinking about it the day before, I didn't, and so I was like, yeah, let's go. And it's quite far to go to Africa,
Yeah.
that part of Africa, to Rwanda.
Do they even have an airport?
Yes, they do have an airport. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Emirates flies there, I think.
Yeah, do have an airport. And I wanted to go through Turkish Airlines, and I could stop in Turkey and hang out a little bit and do all that stuff. But then I ended up going to some other, I think KLM or something. So yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah.
And I was the only Muslim who went on the trip. There was one more supposed to come on the trip, but she got some travel problems, so she didn't make it. But yeah, it was something else. Yeah.
I mean, getting there was probably the easy part to the airport, but what about getting to where you actually had to go in Rwanda? I'm pretty sure, because obviously there were seminaries and everything in the U.S. setting it up, but how was the challenge getting to where you needed to go after you got to Rwanda?
It was okay. It wasn't too bad. It's a highly secure place. The only thing, I had a massage gun. It's like Theraguns. So like they were like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a massage gun, like a gun." I was like, "No, it's a massage instrument." just work it, and but it was fine. It's a highly secure city of Kigali, and so you can walk. Women are walking around at night, and there's no problem. For example, so it's highly secure, highly safe. It's well done. Yeah.
So when you get there, you are meeting. I'm sure you took some sort of summary, or got a bit of the historical background of the genocide and the events following it.
Yeah.
And so when you're there, who are you meeting? What are you trying to do to understand what the current situation is like? How did they get past it?
Right.
I guess, like, are you just going there as a note taker, or are you trying to discuss with people? Like,
hey, did you guys talk about actually what happened? Maybe some listeners aren't privy to actually what happened in Rwanda.
Yeah.
Like, what,
so
that's a good idea.
backstory.
So in preparation, they wanted us to like watch some movies, read some books, read some articles, get acclimated to the actual history. And so I did watch some documentaries and some movies and books and articles, whatever, to get to before I got there. Everyone was kind of already aware of what happened, and it was more of just getting more deeper insight and reflection.
But what actually happened?
So what happened was many years ago, there was different colonizers who came into Rwanda, and Europeans, no surprise, and they were trying to play power and control, and they would switch out, switch in, switch out, switch in, and then ultimately what happened was you had one group that was in power, and then the colonizer would leave and put the other group in power.
Yeah, the Tutsi and the Hutu.
Yeah. And so then there was all this tension that happened between because the people in power now lost the power. Now you have new people in power. So there's a fear that they're going to come back into power again, right? And then this slowly they started to even many years ago they started to implement like genocides. They don't happen generally overnight. They're systemic and they take a long time, and they're multifaceted, right? You don't just have one industry. You have multiple industries that are working together to cause genocide to happen. And so they would, for example, have like ID cards. They would implement ID cards. In the ID card, it would have what tribe you are, Hutu, Tutsi, whatever it may be. And so that was the first way of like, you start introducing that. So then you're creating barriers between people, right? So like, oh, okay, then you're Punjabi and you're whatever, and you're like, so like, then it's okay. So then the tribalism starts to get introduced in society. Okay, once you start to do that, then things can get a little slowly. You implement slight changes, right? And it got to a point where Tutsi were not allowed to go to get an education, right? And surprisingly enough, what I learned over there were Muslims were also not supposed to get an education either.
Oh, wow.
It was a very anti-Islamic regime as well.
So the Hutus did not like Muslims or the Tutsis, and I think there were a couple other tribes, right?
Yeah. So that was, and the Muslims were the only religious group that defended the genocide from happening. Like they're actively trying to stop genocide from happening. There's the only religious group, and they still remember it today. They're like indebted to the Muslims.
Yeah.
There's one imam in this Al Jazeera article about this, but there's one imam. He opened his masjid to people to come in and be a refuge.
Yeah.
And somebody threw a bomb in there to kill them. And so the imam survived, but some people in his Jama'ah, his congregation, didn't survive. There is a green mosque in Kigali. And that's a green mosque is like where it's like the Muslim, quarters, if you like, right? And most Muslims go there. There's a couple of restaurants. There's like, thobe stores and everything. The masjid's there. And when the Hutu came in to kill people, they went to the minaret and started to like shoot people from there. Yeah. It was like the level of how bad it was. 1 million people were killed in 100 days.
Yeah.
1 million people in 100 days. People would kill their own wives.
What?
If they would kill their own wives if they were Tutsi, and they would kill their own children because they were half Tutsi.
Wait. So they're marrying Tutus and Hutsis marry into each other?
Yeah, they were married.
They would say
they were married. Yeah.
In order to prove my Hutu superiority, I'm going to kill my Tutsi wife.
When it's time for the genocide to happen, dude. When I read those numbers, I think that's the biggest genocide that within 100 days, 800,000, 1 million people. I think in a 100-day span, there's never been a genocide with that much killing.
Yeah.
What year is it, by the way?
No, it's 30 years ago from 2005.
Yeah, so about 1994.
25. So 30 years.
But like you said, it's in the making, right? Like when Belgium came in and like it's evil. Like tribalism is so evil. Alhamdulillah for Islam, bro. I mean, like I know Muslims themselves fall prey to this, but Islam itself hates tribalism, right? Like Muhammad Sallallahu was, even though he was from the greatest of tribes, he was the one who was trying to obliterate this tribalism. But imagine Belgium comes in, they give all of the nice luxury academic positions to the Tutsi, who are only 15% of the population, but they get all of this. And then, obviously, the Hutu, there's a lot of boiling happening here, and they're majority of the population. Yeah. So the ID cards, it's like this fake pragmatism. Like, oh, no, we're only giving ID cards just to make you... We see this everywhere in the world. We see this in the United States, some areas too now, right? No, the ID cards are just for identification. That's all it is. But those actually further help identify what was happening. So when this boiled over in 94, they just... Because the Hutu, I think, were in power before. Then the Belgium came and gave Tutsi the power. And then when they started getting weaker, the Tutsi, if I'm not mistaken, then they just went, okay, this is time. We've got power now. We've got the power now. And we're going to take revenge so that the Tutsi can't become powerful anymore. Uh-huh. So that obviously takes a long time to happen, like he was saying, right? Yeah. But imagine the tribalism is so important that you're going to kill your own wife and children, bro. Like... That's insane, dude.
And so everybody was, when I said it was multifaceted, the people in the media, like on the radio systems, they were also part of this propaganda. The churches were also part of this, like the priest and the nuns.
Yeah.
They would invite them to the church and aglagake, set them on fire. Like you cannot,
dude, that's
and you
insane.
walk into the church and you see all the bullet holes and the bomb shell, like you see all this stuff. And then they collect the bones of the victims at the bottom of the church. You can still walk around and go to the basement. You see different types of the machete wounds in the skull, right, and the blood. And
Wait, what do you mean the bones? Like it's like in display cases?
yes,
That's crazy.
yeah. Likely
This
you
is a whole
can't.
different level,
Likely
bro.
you can't identify the bodies. That's why I'm assuming that they didn't bury them at that point. But.
Was Belgium the main country that was the driver here?
No, there were multiple. There were multiple European countries that were involved. Belgium was one of them. The French were also part of this. The French were supplying military to the Hutu during this whole operation.
Wow.
And so they like that. So it's
what happens?
Flaming the fire,
What
bro.
happens traditionally is one colonial power will take usually a minority group, and why did they choose a minority group? You'll see this in like Syria, many different things. That's just on the top of my head right now, but you name it. Many colonial countries were governed by the minority of that. There's one specific reason is that minorities traditionally are easier to control. You don't have to deal with a very large dispersed ethnicity and ethnic groups. Also, oftentimes minorities are different skin tones, usually lighter skin tones, have an air of superiority over others, and so they use that as another way to kind of wedge.
We're different.
They kind of create like a class system based on that, right? Once they do that, it's like, okay, they got their people in power. Now the French will see, we have a disenfranchised majority. How do we get our footprint in Rwanda?
Yeah.
Because this is primarily a Dutch project, right? So they're going to start funding the opposition.
Pure evil.
And that's how. And until like people get past like their ethnic and tribe, one of the beautiful things about Islam is that it aims to destroy a lot of these divisions that cause strife in society, right? Nationalism and everything, it's all considered haram, and so this is your enemies end up using these divisions against you. And the more you use your brain to realize like we're all on the same team, we all live together, and we have to figure it out. That's when the society progresses beyond.
Yeah.
What are the natural
control.
resources that were that incentivize these powers to like get involved in Rwanda?
Well, I mean, there's always natural resources that are available. If you go to Rwanda, it's like they call it the Switzerland of Africa, right? It's absolutely gorgeous.
Really?
I mean, it's green Alps, and it's just stunning, to look at. And you really can't understand how that happened here. Right, it's almost like not in a facetious way or a mocking way, but kind of like a Back to the Future moment where in part 2 and Marty goes back to 1980, and it's like different 1980. That's how it feels, because you read all this, you saw the interviews of people, then you arrive there and you're like, everyone's getting along. I don't understand how this could be that place where all of this happened. It's hard to understand.
Interesting dynamic.
Hard to believe. But what's interesting is that they don't let anybody forget it. So what they do is, even if people, so it's in the school systems, they educate them in the school systems. This happened. This is a part of our history. It's sad, but they have a museum to remember everything that happened, memorialize everything that happened. And then if kids are out of school, like kids on the street don't go to school, they're also educated about it. So they don't let anybody not know that this thing happened, so that it doesn't happen again. General Kagame was the one who was part of the Tutsi rebel forces to come and save Rwanda, or the Tutsis from the genocide. He's now the president. He's been the president since then.
Wow.
Like 30 years. Like he's still still there. And you can critique that. I guess it's still too long to be president, but I mean, he did save the country. So it's kind of hard to get him out at that point. You know what I mean? It's like, for what the service that was done.
So what did you have to do when you were there? Like, I mean,
Yeah. So we visited different memorial spots, the churches, like the churches that were shot up. We also met with. So there was the part where you're coming in to focus solely on Rwandan history, right? And today. So you're going to the churches, you're going to the museums, and you're also going to the reconciliation village. That thing was too much. Like, it was something where, like, say for example, someone comes and tells you, like, I can heal the wounds with my hand, and you don't believe it. And then after a couple of days, you see people who are healed, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe they can do that. So it was so hard to believe, because what they did was they made a village, okay? And the Tutsi and the Hutu, they would live together interdependently. And they would build homes, build water systems for each other, right? And you can think about it, like, how is that even possible? Like, what happened is, say, like, there's a group of Tutsi, and the Hutu go to get the wrench for the water pump. They think they're going to come back and kill them, right? Because it's actively in their minds. This is the enemy, right? And so, but what happens is, when you're interdependent, then eventually you learn to forgive each other. And this was very hard for me to understand as an American. There were two things I could not understand. I could not understand, how could you forgive anything like that, right? There was a man there there was a woman next to him. He put his hand on her leg, which was we thought it was kind of weird, but he's like, this woman whose leg I'm touching right now, I killed her husband and 2 of her kids.
Yo.
What?
And now I'm the godfather in her family.
What?
I said, what are you talking about? Come on. What do you mean? Right?
What?
And it's just mind-blowing. Then another guy comes out and he's like, I feel really remorseful about what I did, and but they find a way to live together. And I asked the tour guide, I said, how is this possible? He said, it's interdependent. You in America, if you and your sister don't talk, you can live in LA and she can live in New York, and then you don't have to talk to each other ever again. It's just, but here you make them live together, and they have to work together to survive.
Who started this project of this interdependent relationship?
Oh, man, I wish I remember who
I was wondering if it was the
started.
president or
I
if it
did
was an NGO type thing.
A lot of my knowledge from this is from the movie Hotel Rwanda, but there were some courts that were established after the genocide where they figured that there were so many perpetrators, they would emphasize forgiveness and reconciliation over actual prosecuting
I see.
the
That's
criminals.
interesting. And how large of a scale is interdependent living?
It's a small village. It's just a
village.
village.
Okay, got
just
it.
a village, right? So the courts he's talking about, what happened is they did a combined system from indigenous Rwandan ways of handling court justice problems and the Western system. They made a hybrid system, because they said, if we do the Western system, we're never going to finish this thing. It's such a slow process, the Western process of, but basically what you do is you go in front of the entire community, and if you confess to your sins or transgressions, then you get like half punishment, right? That was the deal. You confess, I did this, okay, then you go to half punishment. Then Kagame eventually, and he said no death penalty. That was his thing too. That's the ways he built that forgiveness. He cut it in half, and then no death penalty, and then ultimately he forgave people in the prison, right? So he could have gotten revenge on them, but he chose that kind of rahma tactic.
Do more carnage,
Yeah, and then to kind of rebuild. And then everybody now, you're no longer tribal, you're all Rwandan. There's no more Tutsi, no more Hutu, no more whatever. Everybody's Rwandan. And that shifted the focus, right? And even if you look at like the early Muslims in the Quraysh and how they were so tribal, and there's like sub-Quraysh tribes and things, and they kind of had this superiority thing. And so, but this was like eliminating that. So you're all Rwandans, this is your focus now. So that was also very interesting to notice. The other thing I couldn't figure out as an American was how could religious people do this? I couldn't understand, like, because that's supposed to be this we grew up here in America, so we watch all these movies and shows and understand, like, the church is that place of sanctity, that church of peace where you have refuge. And like, even today, refugees go to the church, and people, asylum seekers, go to church and hang out there. And but that was something that was hard to believe. But they were programmed, and they were programming others, or brainwashed, that it's God's work.
Yeah.
It is God's work to kill Tutsi.
In the name of God, you commit all crimes. Yep.
And so that was very hard to digest. But again, it was, the entire society was programmed that way. And when you look at interviews of Tutsi, they would say that the Hutu had the devil inside of them, right? And then the Hutu would say, we had the devil inside of us. We didn't know. It's like we didn't even know what we were doing. Like we were so, like we were just, our hearts were, it was covered, and we couldn't see, we couldn't hear, we couldn't, yeah, it was
reminiscent of some certain group today. Who's doing a lot of killing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There was
yeah.
There was a couple of really powerful stories I wanted to share. One was this woman named Immaculée, and she has a book out on this topic as well. And she was Tutsi. She is Tutsi. She's now in his house. I think she lives in New York and also lives in Rwanda, has 2 homes. But she talks about how, her family was just living a normal life, a little bit of problems in school in terms of like you had to go to a certain school. If you were Tutsi, you couldn't go to regular schools, but regular life.
Yeah.
And then the genocide. So how there has to be a tipping point. Like there's a problem, and there's like a tipping point that explodes and things get way out of hand. So what happened was the leader of Rwanda was assassinated. Was in a helicopter or plane, I think helicopter,
yeah.
And then boom, somebody threw a weapon at it and exploded, and that's when they're like, oh, it must have been Tutsi, and then that just went off. That's how it just tipping point. So Immaculée, she's trying to go to school, and then all of a sudden it starts, right? And you ask yourself, how can you have 1 million people be killed in 100? It's a lot of people be killed, right, in a certain amount of time. So what happened is that it's like, those zombie movies where everyone becomes a zombie, and then the zombies are all attacking. That's what happens. Basically, everybody became a genocider, right? They got machetes, and they went and just killed their neighbors, killed their friends. Anybody who's Tutsi, go in and find them. Your best friend, your classmate, the bully, everyone, and whoever you could think of, you went out and you killed them, right? So her family, most of them were killed. Immaculée's family. She ends up going to the priest home, right? And the priest was a really good priest, and he and I think 3 other girls or 2 other girls. So they hid in the bathroom. Okay, for 3 months. They hid in a bathroom for 3 months, stacked on each other, right? And they would find ways to, use the restroom and eat whatever they could, right? But that's how they lived for 3 months. And Immaculée was like, you need to put your dresser in front of the bathroom. In case they come up to the house, they won't, see us in the bathroom because it's an old dresser, you can't move it. And so
they blocked the door so they wouldn't know that it's a bathroom under behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so ultimately they did come up there, and they're like, no one's here. And then she survived, right? They eventually got out, and obviously their bodies were they had to learn how to walk properly because they were just stacked, for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And they were malnourished, and and then eventually her friend took her to one of the people that had killed her family. And he used to be really rich in suits and, nicely groomed and everything. And, she's like, this is the man who killed some or most of your family. So yell at him, beat him up, whatever you want. And Immaculée, she's very Catholic. She's very religious Catholic. She looks at him, and she's like, she felt so much pity. So you used to be this in her mind, full suit, nicely groomed, established, politician, whatever it was, businessman, and now you're shabby, prisoner clothes, prisoner hair, prisoner beard, and like, she just felt pity for him, touched his head and said, "I forgive you." And and she was like, and she spoke at the conference part, which is the second part of the trip, but she was like, I don't. She's like, even if you don't believe in Jesus, get inspiration from him, and he taught that forgive them for they know not what they do. And if I want everyone who forgave, they always mentioned God. That was almost every time. They said, if I want God to forgive me, I need to forgive them. It kept saying that. There's a hadith about this too. So I was like very powerful when I found the hadith after this. It was very, very powerful. But that was one story. The other one was Mark. Mark was very rich. His father had like 10 cows. And cows were the big 10 cows. 20. He had lots of wives, and Mark had 25, 27 siblings. Okay, from his mothers, right? They're not Muslim. They're something else, right? So when the genocide happened, his father was gone. All his moms were gone. 25 out of 27 of his siblings were dead, right? And they beat him up pretty bad. So like his entire right side is like disabled, right? He has a machete wound on his head here, and he ended up being in a coma, and then he was living next to a dumpster. Then he heard about the reconciliation village, and he was super skeptical about it. He's like, "What do you mean they're gonna like, if I go, they're gonna kill me?" Right? So he goes there, and in his mind, he says that I'm going to kill all of them. I'm going to kill all of the Hutu. Mm-hmm. And he's just sitting there in the bed, and they make a house for him, and he can't believe it. He's like, "What do you mean they're gonna make a house for me?" Right? And so they see a little like pothole in the house. He says there's a pothole in the house, and they're like, "We'll fix it." He's like, "They're only going to fix it. They can kill me faster. They can run to me, kill me faster at night." So at night, doors are open, and he keeps a machete with him at nighttime when they're going to come in and kill him. But then he realizes ultimately that they're not here to kill him, that they're here together. So he says, "Inside my heart, I killed all of them. But ultimately, I learned that we're all Rwandans, and I forgave all of them." He said, "When I didn't forgive them, I was overweight and all these wrinkles on my face. As soon as I forgave them, I lost all this weight. My wrinkles on my head went away." And then he married a woman whose father had been involved in killing his family.
Dang.
What?
That's insane, bro.
It's just like
this is. I mean, although the tribes in Medina, the Aus and Khazraj, they had a lot of wars before the Prophet came, and it reminds me of some of the things that the Prophet did to strengthen the bonds in the Medinan society when there's already a divided society that has tribal conflict among them, has a new group of immigrants who are coming in, and having them stay at each home and forming bonds and communities is just reminds me of all that.
SubhanAllah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, staying at the houses of Ansar. Yeah.
I want to ask you a question. I don't know if you thought of. I'm sure you've thought about this with what's going on with the Gaza right now, right?
Yeah.
So first question is, do you think people are, because there's still when you look at the media, I was telling these guys before the show that like J.D. Vance was on Theo Von's podcast, and Theo Von was talking about how, hey, it's a genocide, and JD's like, I don't think it's a genocide. I don't think they're intentionally massacring people. And some folks saying it's not enough numbers. Like a million in 100 days is crazy, right?
That's insane,
right? So number one, do you think that Rwanda is, because of what happened, that severity is like people have cause for saying what's happening now is not a genocide, whatever? Second question as a follow-up is, when this is all over, because we know things will pass. This doesn't happen, I think when we're in the midst of it, or like when it's going to end, right? Do you see like some kind of harmony between people who are like behind the genocide today in Israel? and people of Gaza and Philistine, because there's a lot, there's this whole. I've heard some people on the pro-Israeli side admit that, like, yeah, I think we've gone too far, but we can't stop now because, of course, they're gonna like turn around and like when the shoe's on the other foot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was hoping you could like talk about those 2 points.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what your first question was.
About the genocide, because Rwanda was so severe, 1 million in 100 days.
Numbers. Okay, yeah.
Are people using that like, well, that's a real genocide? This ain't really a genocide because this is where are we at? 50,000. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think that there's it's a complicated reason, right? One is that the word genocide was established by the UN, United Nations, after the Holocaust, and it was it was not retroactive. This is this, and then some people, they try to hold on to this term. Only it's for the Holocaust, and you can't, which is ridiculous because there were genocides happening before and after the Holocaust. Whether it's called that or not doesn't really matter. That's what it was. I don't think it's the numbers thing. I think that's an excuse. We have Amnesty International. I believe the UN also has established it as a genocide in Gaza and Palestine, and so that's just what it is.
Yeah, it's the intent, not the
UN,
numbers, right?
The UN doesn't have any guidelines on the amount of people.
Yeah.
So
it's the intent behind everything.
It's the intent, but it's also whether there's government officials behind some of the language related to the killing. Is there genocidal intent?
Yeah.
Are there words being conveyed that are expressing hatred to a group of people that is expressing violence towards a group of people?
And the brainwashing from such a young age, right? It's crazy.
And it's accountability, right? If someone says, when it misses the genocide, then they have to be accountable for what's happening, right? To this day, there hasn't been a public acknowledgement of forgiveness to the African American community in America. Like, no president has said, we are now acknowledging and apologizing for how we treated the African American community through slavery, through kinds of racism, etc. Because if they did that, what would happen? They'd have to do reparations. They have to find ways to pay them back and admit that guilt and change structural systems that are that are pressing people right now. So I think that's another reason is once you do that, and unfortunately, Netanyahu was. But
on that point, but why? Yeah. Couldn't the president just say, "I'm sorry, but can't fix anything now, but it's too much of a pain in the butt to change anything, but we're sorry."
Yeah,
that's what I mean. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
they could, but then once you admit something, then it's like that. It brings it makes it more. Once someone admits it, then it's like, okay, so then what are you going to do about it?
Right? But I think don't you think as a society we've admitted to it?
But it has come from the president, right? So with the Japanese community, Ronald Reagan, he did admit that we treated Japanese Americans wrong. Okay. And then he gave them $20,000 to each survivor of the internment camps.
Okay.
Right? And so if you do that, then it's like, well, what are you going to do about it now? How are you going to make up for it? You know what I'm saying? So
where's our justice then?
Yeah.
Right? I know what you're saying. I don't know if you like that answer. You're kind of making a funny face, but no, but the thing is, I think in all seriousness, what it comes down to is the precedent that you give to people of someone who's upholding justice. The higher you build that scale and raise that bar for yourself, the more you have to show your justice. So if you're saying we're people of freedom of speech, you can live however you like, and we're going to uphold justice, we're going to be the forebearers of the torch of justice of the world, or the police of the world when it comes to justice. All right, then if you're apologizing, you're wrong, and you're saying at such a large scale, where's justice for us then, right? Mm-hmm. So the greater responsibility you have, the more justice you have to serve, right? I think that's what he's referring to. But I don't know if you guys saw that video of Netanyahu talking to that kid and talking strategic war planning that they're going to do. Yeah. So cringy. It was like he was obviously trying to teach the world what he was doing. And Gabor Mate, that's how you pronounce his name, right? The psychologist. Gabor Mate. He had a really interesting piece on this. He's like, yes, of course, Palestinian children and Palestinians, the trauma that they went through, there's no amount of reparations or anything you could do to change that. You just have to. It sounds a little cliche. You just have to be really nice to people like that. Like there's nothing else you could, there's absolutely nothing you do. But he said the trauma that people don't talk about is what the Israelis are putting the Israeli children through, brainwashing them, right? From such a young age that these people are rats. These people, they're always going to be out to get you. You can never trust them. So some kids in their innocence, they're just going to listen, but they're always going to have questions. But a lot of them, he was saying that if they find that there's something wrong with what they're being taught, they get ostracized by their parents and their families, right?
Yeah.
So they have to deal with that craziness too. Like evil breeds evil, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this huge community of two people who used to live together before, but now there's trauma in so many different ways. I know the word trauma is used very loosely sometimes, but the level of trauma that even the perpetrator's side is brainwashing their children with is irreparable. Like you can't repair that, no matter how much you undo. If you can, that brainwashing that child had from formative years all the way to like 25, how are you going to change that? You can't change that. It's just a recipe for a humongous disaster. So but the cool thing about the Palestinians is if you talk to them, they don't actually want like they just want it to end, and they just want to live peacefully. And they literally said that, you know what, if you just let us live alone, we don't want to do anything to them. We just want to have like basic human rights. We want to live like human beings. We're not going to like take revenge on them if we have power over them. Some of them even said that. They said, if we were, let's say that there was one state and the Palestinians ran it, they're like, we're never going to take revenge on them. That's not what we're here for. And that's a really big thing to say, right? But the main thing here, I think, is the brainwashing. Even that happened with the Tutsi and the Hutu. That didn't happen overnight. That happened to have that, constantly feeding this machine of hate and you're being subjugated, you're this, and then eventually it just...
So I want to, there's something, there's an analogy. So I have a childhood friend of mine. His two brothers, their dad was killed by an Israeli rocket when they were little kids, right? So I've always remembered growing up, there was always this like, you could call it the Jews this, the Jews that, right? And I think that it actually makes sense about how people can get blinded when you talk about Rwanda. The analogy I thought about, and this is really simplistic, but how like you human beings, we just get caught up in a moment and we just do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever been I'm saying this all seriousness, so I'm not trying to be funny here, but like in middle school or high school, you ever been like a really like massive food fight in the cafeteria?
Yeah. I wish I never had.
You know what I'm talking about? And you kind of like you're not even trying to start a food fight, but you're in it, and you're like, well, I might as well just jump in.
Yeah.
And you start throwing stuff, right?
You would never do that,
You normally wouldn't do it.
That's a good example,
You know what I mean? Because human nature is like, we're just going to get into this.
You're part of it.
Or like, I remember my last day of senior year of high school, right? We're all running around. I'm jumping on people's backs, right?
Can't imagine jumping on people's backs, but yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're
crazy,
just like...
acting crazy, yeah.
You start, you're just getting the hype.
Yeah.
And I'm like... there's probably that human element, and I think that and coming back to what I said about my friend's situation, I don't know how he would react because of his, if you lose your dad at a young age and it's from this government, can you blame him?
No, I mean that's
that's the thing, and I think it's the higher road, of course, to be forgiving, but like, because you hear about people talking about it too, with going to India, I've heard a lot of Muslims say, man, when we had power, we should have wiped all them Hindus out.
Yeah, no, that happens. Yeah, humans are always going to be humans, man. That's why
you know what I'm saying. So I think that's where it's just like, do you think there's like, as it ends, our precedence is that in general Muslims have been like Saladin. He didn't kill the Christians.
Well, we can't.
Yeah, we can't. Right.
We have that's one of the beauties of Islam is that we have the rules of engagement. Right. That we cannot, and the Christians. Copied the rules of engagement from Islam and the just war rules, but they didn't have any rules because Jesus never fought in any kind of huge wars.
But he never gave them. The thing that people should be like very that I think about is we don't have our Muslims today aren't following the rules of Islam, right? So if they got in power, would they be like, yeah, sorry, bud?
Yeah, that's why leadership is really important. What type of leadership you have is very important. What I'm saying? Yeah.
Even today, there's, the Coptic Christians in Egypt are still around, right? That's testament to how much Muslims were, and India being ruled by Indians and Hindus is a testament that
Yeah.
that we don't, right?
Yeah.
Even the Jewish community being there is also a testament, right?
And so what I'm interested about this conference though. So
Yeah,
you're there
so the second
for
part was the conference, right?
So the first half of this before the conference, how long were you there for? Like observing. Obviously, you guys are academic. Just in case somebody joined
Yeah.
late, you guys are academics. You
Right.
guys have to see this on an academic lens. What happened? What the after effects are? How are people getting along? What
Yeah.
projects were done to mitigate everything?
Right.
What's the system that's there now to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
So how long was that period before the conference? Basically, you were there.
I mean, from what I remember, the whole trip was probably about a week or so, and so it was very jam packed. Right, the conference was maybe 2 or 3 days, and it was to celebrate but commemorate 30 years of Rwandan resilience and healing, and teaching the world how to do this. That's basically, we're the experts. We're going to teach you how to do this, right? Kind of like medicine is in America, where you have like U.S. medical hospitals that are in Qatar now, and right. And so it's like, we're just going to teach you how to do this. And so they brought up the Ukraine a little bit, Bosnia. They brought up the Holocaust. Also was brought up, right? And so my critique of the conference was and Ukraine wasn't from the conference. It was from people who were from Ukraine in the audience, who were members of the attendees. But my critique was, it's good to talk about 30 years ago. What about today? We got to talk about issues that are happening right now, right? And so,
was it after October 7th? This conference?
This was 1 year ago from this summer.
Okay.
So yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely. And I don't know if they want to offend donors or what it was, but I was like, we have to talk about things that are relevant right now, so we can learn from those mistakes. I think if, inshallah, once the war ends, and there are ways you can learn, right? Like, there are some lessons you can learn from Rwanda and then implement those. You have to be kind of adjusted to the setting, right? If you go to Bosnia today, there are some efforts for interfaith work with Serbians, but it's not like we don't go there. We don't like it's not good. It's not a good relationship.
Yeah.
There either, right? And there's still tensions between Germans and Jewish people today, right? It's still a thing. It's there. You can if you meet different people, like, it's like a weird dynamic of like, we feel guilty about it, but we're also like, it's just a confused way to look at it, And so, and it's not perfect in Rwanda. I'm sure there was many people who fled Rwanda and never want to go back, and that's too much for them to get over. But it's a really good system, mashallah, that they found a way to do it.
So a part of this conference, I'm pretty sure they went through like a lot of statistics, and other than the death count, like what were some other staggering statistics that you saw that people don't really know about? Because not too many people know about what happened in Rwanda,
Yeah, I mean, statistics wise,
or anything in the conference.
Yeah,
was like a learning experience that people probably never know.
A lot of them were the stories that I mentioned to you. People were just kind of talking about it, and then they would interview and ask, and I think it really was when someone doesn't forgive someone, they're also imprisoned, right? And so one person who the Immaculée, when she people were talking about it, they were saying, like, when I was in prison, this is at the Reconciliation Village, when I was in prison, and the family that I had killed, before they forgave me, that prison was worse than the actual prison I was in, right?
Wow.
And the people who had like Mark, who had this feeling of hatred, and I'm not going to forgive, until they forgave, they were also in a prison themselves, And so I had thought about, one reflection that I had was with the story of the Prophet ﷺ and his family, and Hind and her family, right? Because that parallel is very strong to interdependence, right? Where her family was killed, then she wanted revenge. She hired Wahshi, right? Killed Hamza, right? Prophet ﷺ's devastated, right? Abu Sufyan becomes Muslim. Hind becomes Muslim. They cross paths. Prophet ﷺ doesn't give her salam. And she said, doesn't the Prophet of God give salam to fellow Muslims or believers, and he's still hurting. This is a big deal. Wahshi comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he's like, are you the same Wahshi who killed Hamza? And he says, yeah. Tell me how you killed Hamza. And he tells him, Wahshi said the Prophet ﷺ's face changed. And he said, if I'm ever in the same setting as you, don't let me see your face. And can you imagine Prophet ﷺ telling any of us that? It's like mind-blowing. He never did. Then he ended up, Wahshi ended up killing Musaylim al-Kadhab, the false prophet, the liar. And then he said, I killed the best of people. Now I killed the worst of people. Do I have my, am I fulfilled now for my penance? So ultimately, Hind comes to the Prophet ﷺ and she says, before I became Muslim, you and your family were the most hated to me in the world. And Prophet ﷺ said, Aidan, me too, And then she said, when I became Muslim, you and your family are the most beloved to me in the world. SubhanAllah. It's a beautiful story of where you went from here to this, and that's the interdependence, right? I think that's some lessons we can learn on an interpersonal level too, of just if we don't meet with people that we have so much animosity with that have hurt us, then we're never gonna be able to truly forgive them and forgive ourselves be forgiven and forgive them and so forth.
So it's kind of like that whole term of living in someone's head rent free.
Yeah.
So today, let's say in our Muslim social media discourse, you're seeing Muslims throwing shade at each other all day long on X, right? Obviously, and whatever transgressions are made against people, it's someone said something about me on a YouTube video. Not even close to some of the stuff you're talking about. It's not even the same stratosphere, right? And people are beefing about it, and it's been ongoing for a good minute.
First world problems, bro.
Yeah.
So much bigger than we think it is.
Yeah, so it just makes me think about even some else. There's some people I don't like. The people I've never met, but you said something about me on X once. we about to have beef for life now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But is it
that's
really
why it's interesting to hear this stuff, bro.
Yeah.
Of these genocides, because it puts everything in perspective. The things that you value and you think are actually egregious, they're absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. It's absolutely nothing. It's such child's play. That's why it's such a waste of time.
Yeah, someone
when people go back and forth on social media, to me, even if it's Islamic debates and stuff, I just think it's completely stupid and ridiculous, bro. If you're in tune with what's actually happening in the Muslim world, what's happening in the world, that stuff is it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
Feelings get involved, but it's entertainment. That's all it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's I mean, there's really what's the point of it? How long are we actually in this life together? And I think one thing that Muslims who are in leadership roles have to understand is that people are watching them and they're learning from their behavior. I don't know how much the audience knows about the Nation of Islam and their some of their transition into Sunni Islam, right? So Elijah Muhammad was the leader of the Nation of Islam. One of his sons, Warithin Muhammad, Imam Warithin Muhammad, rahimahullah, he became Sunni, and then he was in charge of the greatest conversion to Islam, Sunni mainstream Islam, in America on 1975 Savior's Day. He converted them from nation to Sunni. A lot of the followers.
Do you remember how many? I can't remember. Do you remember how many people actually converted?
Man, I wish I had the number.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, yeah. I can't remember either. So I was just wondering. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and so it was a huge conversion, right? And what happened is that he wanted them to gradually go into Sunni Islam. Imam Siraj Wahaj wanted them to go from 0 to 60 like a Porsche. Boom. This was all weird stuff, no offense, but we need to go back to Sunnah, Sunnah Jama'ah, Aqidah straight, all these things, And so they beefed about it. Imam Wardi Muhammad and Imam Siraj Wahaj beefed about it. When Wardi Muhammad passed away, they reconciled and it was okay. I saw Imam Siraj Wahaj at a mass Muslim American Society iftar in California, Orange County, California, this past Ramadan. I talked to him about all these things. He says, yes, all this is true. And then he said, I'm writing a book about W.D. Muhammad.
Wow.
SubhanAllah, man.
Wow. That's impressive. That's impressive.
I was like, man, I still get tears in my eyes when
That's impressive.
When I first heard it, I was like, what? And I was like, man, so that's the kind of stuff that we need to see out of our imams and our teachers and our shuyukh and we need to see that kind of forgiveness and that kind of Ibn Taymiyyah also had he also had people who were scholars who would talk bad about him, and they would ask him, what do you think about this XYZ person? Ibn Taymiyyah would say, you know, who am I to say anything about such a person? You know, like, that was the adab that they had. So that's the thing that to kind of bring that kind of bring it back, you know.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just look up some statistics if you guys don't mind. I mean, just as more greatness to this. The exact number is debated of the conversion that happened, but it's over 100,000 and can hover around 200,000 members of Nation of Islam transitioned to Sunni Islam under his guidance in the mid to late 1970s.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, mashallah.
Especially from one small community.
And
it's tucked away.
And he never talked bad about his dad either.
Yeah, that's true. I noticed that.
It's very beautiful. His dad, who was on a different kind of path, right? He would always say, like, you know, I think what my dad meant to do was just get people to kind of come into Islam. He would always kind of make excuses for his father publicly.
Empowering. He talked about empowering.
Well, there's wisdom in that too. I mean, many people would say, well, you should call out a false prophet for what he is, you know, and there's a lot of emotional attachment from his followers. It's not, maybe he may have other feelings, but he may want to appeal to Elijah's following, his existing following, and pull on those heartstrings and say, hey, you know, those same feelings can be had in a different direction. Just like how you talk to Christians. It's not like we're against Jesus. Jesus is the son of, is a prophet in Islam, but we don't believe him as God, right? He's not the son of God. And we try to have those same feelings when we're talking to Christians, but for him as a prophet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you redirect that love and that spirituality that you experience from in Christianity towards the belief in one God.
Towards the final testament. Yes, sir. Wow, man. That must have been quite the experience. So, obviously, like, anybody who goes to places where a lot of crazy stuff happens, they come back, they can start having, like, crazy dreams, right? You don't have to share exactly, but did you start feeling a little agitated and weird? Because it's so much to take in 1 week.
Yeah, it was, I think when we were there, it was a lot. It was just, I mean, you're just seeing these skulls and you're seeing these, right? I mean, you're seeing people who are, you know, wounded still, physically wounded. And, yeah, man, it was a lot to, it was a lot. I don't know how else to say. So I think, you know, one thing that we try to do is try to have some fun, you know, while you're there, so you just don't get too much depressed into that setting. I remember when I went to Bosnia to learn about their, what they call a war. They don't call it genocide. The Bosnians call it a war, because they say as soon as we got weapons, America came in and stopped us.
Wow.
There is like the image that America has, oh, we quit and save the Bosnians from the crazy Serbians. Da, 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 da. But Bosnia's narrative is, no, you stopped us as soon as we got weapons. You know, we are powered. Then you're like, no, everyone stop fighting. Don't do that. Don't do that. Different mentality.
Well, break it up.
That's crazy. I never heard that perspective before.
And then they said, one woman told me, she was like, it's very beautiful. She said, we didn't know we were Muslim until we were killed for it.
Subhanallah. Wow.
That's the world they were in. They were just so, you know, like communist or not like into religion too much. But then, boom, now, what? And then there was a trend of the firstborns being named Hamza. First, the boys that were being born at that time, the period, were named Hamza. Hamza. Wow. And then I asked, I said, do you think that's because Hamza was a warrior, you know, a strong fighter, strong man? And they said, I don't think it was, she said, I don't think it was maybe subconsciously. We thought we need to have boys who are strong to protect us.
SubhanAllah.
You know?
That's insane.
So that was very powerful. People who were just like professors, kind of like the story of Omar Mukhtar, you know, was like just teaching, and professors, and then all of a sudden had to become activated, become warriors, carry swords with them. And like, it was just, you know, and Bosnia is interesting because they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
You can't tell who's Serbian, who's Bosnian.
Or Croat. What's up? Or Croat.
Yeah, right? Yeah. If I go to the Serbian grocery store, I don't know if they're Bosnian, what they are. I can't tell who's what, you know? They look exactly the same culture, same Eastern European, everything.
Their last names sound the same?
Same food, pide, you know, all these things are the same. the Muslim thing, and they wanted to get revenge from what the Ottomans did to them. That was the mentality, right? And so that's the thing that Rwanda was like, cut it off, cut it now. No, we're all Rwandan. Stop it now. We're not going to this resurrection 100 years from now. We're going to make sure it's cut off, reframe everything, and educate.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
There's
again.
a lot that
I had actually spoken to some Serbs. I've worked with various Serbian. We always got along, and I've always like, what's the difference between you and a Bosnian and a Croat? Is it just a religion? Yeah. I think Croats are like more Protestant. I think Serbs are Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah.
And Bosnians are Muslim. But everything else is like that's the only difference.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's also the barrier. I had a friend back in college. He was Serbian. His last name was Milosevic, and he became Muslim. He didn't last because the pressure from his family was crazy.
I can imagine.
Like, because it's like you're not Serb anymore because you're not Muslim, because you're a Muslim now.
Tied together, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's where that's a unique scenario. I think I talked to some of them, and they're like, "Yeah, man, we probably should have just it would have been better if we just stayed Yugoslavia." I think for sports purposes, because they were good in basketball and soccer. They would have been really good, you know. And one of the guys was telling me, he's like, you know, Edin Dzeko, he played for Man City. He's Bosnian. And so I feel like there's no animosity, but there's still tension for sure. And I think when I talk to some of them, they're like, yeah, when my dad goes back, you know, our family, we were Serbs, but we, like, let's say we grew up in Croatia. Our family's like lived in Croatia for a while, and there's still this nature like, oh, we're looked down upon, we're second class citizens in a kind of a weird way.
Yeah. It's everywhere in the world, man. It all comes in different shades.
There was a couple of more things that from the conference came to my mind. One was there was a PhD, MD, Rwandan doctor of both, I guess, and he did a study, very fascinating, on can you heal from this Rwandan if you were young, right? Can you heal from this now, like 30 years later? Is it possible to be healed from this? And he said, even if somebody goes through therapy and, you know, counseling and all of that EMDR, like trauma, whatever, healing, and he said genetically they have changed.
Wow.
It cannot go back. You have to keep like monitoring and working with them, but they are not the same anymore. And even with therapy, it's not going to change the genetics. And then, you know, it goes through the trauma of the generations too, right? Genetically. Yeah. So,
how will it manifest? Will the change be more related to survival? Like, will they become? How is that change going to manifest itself in society? Is what I'm asking. Did he say anything about that, or is it something that just requires ongoing monitoring?
Yeah, I mean, it was like one session that he kind of put everything in it, but that was like the main takeaway was that, you know, they're not going to be fully like healthy, functional as if it never happened before.
Yeah,
like they're going to be a little, you know, like somebody goes through a traumatic thing in their life, like they're always a little bit edgy about something, so it's going to be there no matter what.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. You know, many nations used to say this before, even amongst the Arabs, like there's even poetry about it, like if your wife is, you know, expecting and she's pregnant, make sure you keep her happy so the child becomes brave and strong and not sad when he grows up, because if she's full of worry and then the child ends up being worried and sad because it ends up the way she nourishes him this is kind of bro science, but I'll get into what contemporary people say, but the food that nourishes them in a similar way, the emotions and the trauma that the mother experiences, the child inherits that, right? Because it's a part of her, and the child's a part of the mother, right? And I think that I mean, you guys can just fact check this and look this up through various like psychiatric journals, but I think as far as the emotional state and the fear of what mother may have been going through when she was pregnant, I think that's what is kind of like a marker of with a fight and flight situation that's built inside of the child, right? That can be a possibility, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I thought that was really interesting, is because what changes if somebody's like living in fear, like you talked about the girl, what was her name, that 3 months? Immaculate. Imagine like if anyone's ever lived in fear for 1 or 2 days, I know this sounds like a really ridiculous like example, but like the week that you had to live in like fear because you don't want your dad to see your report card, your parents see your report card, like everything changes. Like everything is darker.
Yeah.
You know, nothing's as happy. People make awesome jokes. You're just like, and you can't even laugh inside, you know, that kind of stuff. But imagine living through that, how much that actually molds and changes you and how permanent that is, right? Like I can't see any way that it doesn't permanently change the way your brain works and your heart works and the way your senses and your cells. It can't be the same. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, like genetically changing, I think Wallahu Alam, that may have something to do with genetic changes. You know, we have to talk to specialists about that. But living in that type of fear, when you're telling me about that 3 months, I was like, dude, that person's never going to be the same.
Yeah.
And that person, the way they're going to raise their child is probably not going to be, if they never went through that, they're not going to raise their child. Yeah. It's going to be a completely different way of raising them. More fear-based, you know, like watch out for that, look out for this, look out for that.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Instead of, hey, just go and play with those kids, go playing with those kids, go and have fun outside. Rather, oh, you can't go outside now. Nope, you have to, you know, all that stuff plays a role, man.
What's also interesting was in South Africa, right? They had the apartheid system, right? So now there's like rumblings there that this has really happened. This is really a thing. Like, and is it that there's like the resurrection of it is being talked about with these young people now, you know. And so with the Holocaust, there's Holocaust deniers, so they want to say that the Holocaust never happened, or it wasn't as bad, or it was right. And so I think that's why it's important to keep educating people on what's going on, right? And so that's the lesson you can learn. So even when, inshallah, there's a Palestinian state, and it's, you know, there should always be an education about what happened with the occupation, with ethnic cleansing, with the genocide, and so forth, so that it's, you know, that should happen in Israel and in Palestine too. They should be educated. This what happened. That's what we did.
Yeah. So what about woke culture, Sim?
Well, Adeel, you recently were invited to a roundtable discussion about how woke culture can be.
Well, no.
How to reconcile?
There are two different things.
Yeah.
I did go to Rome for a roundtable, and
that's a really fancy gathering for Rome.
Italy.
To discuss
Man, I'm in the
wokeism.
wrong field, bro. You get to travel.
So I went to Rome just like
that's what happens when you go to Hartford Seminary, bro.
A couple of weeks ago. I was in Rome, and this was to discuss the effects of President Trump on the world, right? So people from the military were there, Italian military. People, ambassadors were there. One of the Saudi princes, Turkey is his name.
Oh, Turkey.
Yeah. And so he was there. Then there were people who are business people who had 100-year family military business. Like, all they know is like how to like make bombs, you know. And that's what he was selling there too at the round table. So it's like a round table of people. There are ambassadors there. There was people from the Vatican there, which is, you know, the headquarters of the Catholic Church, right, in Italy.
The Vatican's actually in Rome.
Yeah, like it's like in Rome, but like next to it, kind of.
Okay.
It's kind of
vicinity.
Yeah. So like it is Rome, like but then it's like a separate theocratic entity.
Sure.
It's right next door. So you walk into it. And then there were religious people, military people, business people, people in security, people who are humanitarians trying to end food insecurities in the world, etc. So all tabled together. And they're all there to talk about how things are so unpredictable with President Trump being president of the U.S. So, man, okay, so the Europeans were like, we're really weak. We got nothing. Like we all we have is Germany. Like if and then the EU is like a joke because they're not actually united. The Europeans aren't united anyway, and the United Nations is a joke too. And so they're like, well, what do we have? We have nothing. Like, so the military guy is like, we got to become strong. We got to get the business. He's like, we have to have strong. We have to have weapons. If we have weapons, we can have peace. And I was like, okay. And then, you know, it was like this whole idea was we don't even know if the U.S. is going to be our ally anymore. Yeah. We can't guarantee the U.S. is our ally anymore. We haven't been in war in 80 years. We don't know if we can go to war. If we have to go to war, if we're ready to go to war, we're just like really feel really insecure and stuff. Then it was like it was discussed that Europe is more anti-immigrant than the U.S. It's even more than the U.S. And I was like, man, that's sad. And then they're like,
Just so, if you guys have ever been to other countries, like U.S. is nothing compared to like what we call anti-immigration here. It's nothing compared to everywhere else in the world. But yeah,
so sad. They were like, and so the least desirable immigrant is a young Muslim man.
wow.
A young Muslim man is like the worst.
With the avatar of like degenerate immigrant.
And then even that worse has a worse.
Oh snap!
So the worst Pakistanis and
Pakistani gangbanger.
Bengalis were seen as the good ones.
Okay.
And Pakistanis were seen as the bad ones. Even though they can't tell who's who, but just mentally that's their register.
Is that explain why in the UK the slur is Paki?
I don't know, man. So
Like
this is all hard to take into this conference. Okay, so then
I'm just imagining a deal there.
Like, yo,
Hi guys, I'm here
I
with
feel like
my.
I would have enjoyed this conference.
yeah, you could be trolling, yeah, for sure. And then there was a session on food insecurity, how it's gotten worse as well.
Oh yeah, I'm worried about my weight too.
So people just don't have food to eat across the world, and that's really sad. And it's
Did you think about the influence of religion at all?
Yeah, so I was on the religion panel, and then there was another panel on Israel and Palestine, which I was not on that panel. But one of the Saudi Prince Turkey was on the panel, and then there was the Council of European Rabbis were on that panel. And I think the Prince did a good job of kind of representing the Palestinian side, so to speak.
Turkey?
His name.
Turkey,
Yeah.
It's I don't know if it's the same Turkey that there's like a bunch of Prince
There's
Turkeys,
a
right?
few turkeys.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah,
In the Saudi royal.
I think there are.
okay. I had a business card.
There was one
full
Prince
name.
Turkey that was on Tucker Carlson's show.
His English
That's
is
like-
very
that's-
good.
that's
He
a
went
rich-
to
super rich
Georgetown for university and prep school before that. So,
But
whatever.
so yeah,
You
the
can fact
panel
check
though,
that.
yeah.
So the panel, he was on there, and it was discussing like, he's like, Israel needs to have a reform, right? And then
The Prince said that?
yeah.
Okay.
And there was an ambassador as well who was there, and he's like, what prime minister of Israel has been helpful? Like, it's not just like Netanyahu. It's like it's a recurring problem.
It's a system, yeah.
You have to work and reform the system. I think that was very powerful for the prince and the ambassador to say both at the same time. The European rabbi, head rabbi, was like, he's like, yeah, we shouldn't be doing this occupation. It's not, you can't occupy people and expect to have like a good relationship with them. Also, he's being protective of not saying too much about against Israel or against the Jewish community and stuff. So that was one panel, and then I was on a panel for just talking about. My points were, I put it on Facebook, but my points were talking about the effects of marginalized communities under Trump, like how it's affecting different communities here in the U.S. I also advocated for a Palestinian state. What was interesting was that there was someone, I think he was Israeli. I want to say he's definitely, I'm pretty sure he's Jewish. I'm pretty sure he was like Israeli something. And he was like, because there was a discussion about two states in the Israel-Palestine, and there was like, well, we don't think that's possible to have the two states. And there was pushback from the audience. No, we need to have two states, right? And so one guy, I'm pretty sure he's part Israeli something, whatever. He was like, it's either two states or genocide. And then he was right next to me, and I was like, oh, what is he saying? And then he's like, then I think he realized the audience, like the whole round table was looking at him, like, what did you just say? And then he's like, it's genocide on us, on Israel.
The Palestinians will
if we don't make a Palestinian state, then I guess like the people, other people are going to come eventually and kill us. Like we have to do it for our preservation, right? Then there was a woman from a State Department who was there, former State Department that was there for many years, 27 years, I think. And she said Netanyahu was the one who had this bid'ah of critiquing Israel is anti-Semitic. This is a new bid'ah from Netanyahu. But now it's gotten so ingrained in the young people's minds that they think it's like reality. But this is never really, he just made it up. And then she was saying that we were agreeing that this is actually hurting and causing more anti-Semitism by attaching that term to Israel's domestic and foreign policies of oppression. And so that was the Rome Roundtable in about 5 minutes. It was very interesting. A lot of different people were in the room, and eventually, that's what happened.
So what about the woke stuff?
Yeah, what about the woke stuff?
That was not part of the conference. That was just a separate discussion. I was like, I'm talking about if you want to.
Yeah. So,
where is wokeism now? Where are we? Where is it now? It seems like the reason why is like I was actually talking to Sam about this before. It seems like it had its peak, right? And it seems like it's withering away. Obviously, its effects are going to be lingering. Its tail is going to be hanging out for a little bit. But where is it now? And like, what's happening?
So, at this point, right, there's a push by the president's group, President Trump's group, to end DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion movements. And the idea of DEI is, DEI is very attached to critical race theory, that the system is built upon white supremacy. We want to dismantle that system so that everybody has an equal opportunity to work and part of the system. And for those who are kind of right, and then calling it woke is usually like a pejorative or derogatory term, saying, "Oh, woke culture," or these, liberal snowflakes. It's like a right. It's like trash talk.
He loves that you're saying. It's like a smile.
Yeah, and so that's like a trash talk that's used, right? And then the pushback is like, well, I better be a snowflake than be a tyrant and racist and all this, right? And so, I think I mentioned this before a little bit when I was here last time, is, conflating these terms that they're very kind of intra-Christian, right? When you have when you say I'm conservative, in America, usually it means that you're a conservative Christian, right? And the kind of white Christian European values. And so when we say liberal or progressive, it means that I've gone away from the church and I'm into other things and not into white supremacy and not into capitalism and classism, and I'm kind of away from all these things.
But also not religious.
And away from the church and be not religious, right? And so what happens is that as Muslims, we kind of come in there and we're like, okay, so where do we fit, right? I believe in Allah, and I believe that my whole life should be revolving around Allah's commandments and Prophet ﷺ's commandments, right? And lifestyle. That's what I believe. And to progress away from that is not going to happen. And also to be conservative to a Christian government is also not the best situation, right? Well, we have the Crusades. Mm-hmm. We have the Spanish Inquisition. Mm-hmm. We have colonization. Manifest Destiny, and so forth, right? Doctrine of Discovery, which was we're going to go. God gives us the authority to go and convert people and kill people and all this.
And that goes back to the earlier about Rwanda, because Christianity never gave a framework on how to execute these conversion strategies. Yeah. So people were just like, oh, well, you got to kill them, you got to kill them.
Slavery, indigenous population here in America, Native Americans, Cherokee, and Navajo, again and again. So when Christianity tied with the government, it's not a good formula.
Yeah,
right?
a good point. Yep.
So it's well, we don't want to be conservative that kind of way, but we want to conserve our Muslim values. Yes, we don't want to be conservative in that kind of way. So then we get into this we walk into these frameworks that are not built for us. It's where do we go, right? I do believe that people should have good, fair wages, that the government should help if they need support. But we have Beit al-Mal to give people money who are poor. So I believe in that idea. I believe that people should not be judged on their race, have equal opportunity, that you shouldn't have a prison to school, school to prison pipeline where kids go to school at certain lower economic areas and they go to prison. I believe that's also not good. We should have equal opportunity for all races and colors and stuff. I don't believe that we should ascribe to the LGBTQ modality that has been pervasive in society, because that's not from our way of understanding sexuality and gender, meaning our Muslim way. So that's something I don't agree with on this progressive side. So, right.
I have a question on that point. Have you ever had to be challenged with being a homophobe because of that statement like that?
No, because I'm a Muslim. I'm not saying I'm anti-gay or anti-queer or anti-anything. I'm saying that way of thinking and classifying it, the LGBTQIA way of classifying it, is a Western colonized way that's being forced upon me as a Muslim.
What's your guidance for somebody who's like, let's say they are being pushed to like push for Pride Month?
They're pushed by who?
Somebody. Let's say they're saying like, hey, I need you to like, you know, can you support us, be an ally for Pride Month? What's your guidance for someone
Or put
like
a
that?
pride flag thing on your email.
Yeah, put a pride flag.
Email signature.
Or like, you know, for this month, can you put a pride flag in your cubicle? That kind of thing. Would you? Because I've heard of people.
Yeah.
At some like they'll have.
Yeah, I've gotten pressure to that too.
Yeah. So
when I was at one of the universities, the head chaplain there was like, you know what I do, what he does on his wall. He has like a, you know, open to all, right, and has like a little flag and on the wall so that people who are queer can feel welcome to come into. And queer, just for the record, is not pejorative anymore. It's reclaimed now, so it's not for those who don't know, it's not like I'm making fun of them. It's what they use now for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So put on the wall so it's queer friendly.
Yeah.
But for me, like, this is not how. Like, again, the talking point is, I'm Muslim.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a minority in this country,
Yeah.
and a very oppressed, politicized minority since I was, I don't know how young, right?
Yeah.
For me to ascribe to that framework, it feels like you're colonizing me into that. It's not how I do it.
So what you're doing is we're basically using their kind of language for them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what are they going to say?
Yeah.
Right? And I hit the Muslim because I have some Muslim students who have been bought into that mentality, right? Like they have their own homosexual desires, and they also subscribe to that identity, that whole theology, I guess, even in a way, the whole philosophy.
Yeah.
Of LGBTQIA, and I say, these are all liberal arts kids, so they know all this woke stuff, DEI stuff. They're quite aware, right? So I say, where did this come from? Who taught you that? This whole LGBTQIA way of thinking, queer, gender fluid, all this. Where did it come from? Was it Allah? Was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Where did it come from? Was it a white person? Was it a white man? White Christian man taught you that.
There you go.
The same system that you're critiquing is the one that you're drinking their Kool-Aid.
No, it's interesting
And
you
then
say that.
They're stuck.
No, you're like a few years ago, I was talking to one of my my friends, Sheikh Omar Hasib, and he brought up something very interesting to me. He said that the Rainbow Coalition that actually occurred originally for unity between unity to stop violence between Puerto Ricans, African Americans, and all colors, and people, even white people, were a part of that. Because there was so much racism, and the Rainbow Coalition was. So there was a community. I can't remember if it was the African American community, but generally, colored folk. They considered the LGBTQ or Pride movement as a what do you call it, like a white supremacist movement in a way, because they said that, number one, they hijacked our whole movement, our colors and everything, but they're the ones that promoted it to us the most, and nobody else was promoting it. They actually see it as, like you were saying, a colonizer colonizing colored folk with that ideology, right? Because it stemmed and it came from them, not originally from people to control masses, not because those people who started had those inclinations.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinction. I think that's what you're referring to as a colonization thing, right?
Yeah.
But do you, like, if we're thinking a little at a different level, right? Just more of a bird's eye view. Do you think it's completely healthy to tell people that a white person taught you this, so this is why you shouldn't follow it, or you've been brainwashed by white people? Because that falls into a different type of racism, right? That falls into another type of superiority and a negative thought of another classification of a race, right? Of white, European, Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah. Okay.
And that makes it more, to me, when I hear that, it makes it more tribal and more racist and more Islamic. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It doesn't hit the core of the believer, because look, sometimes to say colonize, especially a colored person, it whips up a whole different recipe in your heart. And I was like, hell yeah, I don't want colonize. Screw colonizers, right? But if you say Islam, it's like, I don't know. Islam is pretty lenient, and I don't know. I think you're overthinking this Islam thing. So sometimes using the Islam, in my experience, using the Islam card is much more of a fitna and much more difficult because it's easier to write off than almost like a buzzword like colonizing. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know if I made sense, but it's just
but I think
a whole
like
bunch of unorganized
it
thoughts.
sounds like I think you're saying you guys are saying the same thing. I feel like because to Adil's point, and I think you're making the same point, is that these Muslim kids, if you say, "Oh, Islam is against this," they're like, "No, the Islam I know is like we love everybody," you know. So his angle is the most effective angle, is what I'm hearing.
Effective emotionally, yes.
Yes, but that's what you got to work on. People work on emotions. They're not.
No, I get that. I get
rational.
That's why I did. That's why I'm thinking. I'm thinking about this loudly.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it took me a while to think, and I'm trying to find the right words.
Yeah. So, do you think the NBA is racist towards white people?
The NBA? No, I don't think it's racist.
The National Basketball Association.
No,
like
yes, because their best white player of the last 100 years, White Chocolate. Why was his name White Chocolate? Jason Williams.
The NBA didn't name him that.
What,
So
he's
that's
better
all
than Larry
fairness.
Bird. He's better than Larry Bird and Joker. What do you mean?
Joker's Serbian though.
I don't know who
white.
Joker is. Who's Joker?
I guess Larry Bird. You got me.
Jokic. He's the
Larry Bird is yeah. You're right. Larry Bird.
There's only a few white guys. It's not that many
Right?
that people can remember.
But you have to be really, really good.
Larry Bird. They call him the hick from French Lick.
Yeah.
You got a racist term for him too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I don't know where this is going. I'm sorry, you guys throwing me off.
No, what he's saying is talent is what basically wins. It's not necessarily that white people are targeted against.
No, it's whoever they find best talent because it equals more money for them. That's what they don't care about.
Yeah. So
color.
my point is that so race is I would argue race is different than prejudice, right? In prejudice you can be, I don't like those people, they're X, Y, and Z, right? As I'm prejudging them, right? They're dumb or they're this, they're that. Race is systemic. There's systemic attachment to it. So it permeates into every society, right? If you look in America, what is the skin color, ethnicity of the vast majority of the CEOs, right? What is it? You know,
right?
And think about it, right? So there is this system there. What is the skin color of most of the inmates in prison? They're black or they're brown, right? So there's a system there. So when we were saying there was a Puerto Rican person who eloquently said this in one of the books that I read from my PhD studies. He said, we're not racist against, we're prejudiced, we don't hate or whatever white people. We're trying to save them from the same system that's corrupt that they made. They're also suffering from that, right? Because the Madloom, like people who are doing the oppression, whether they understand it or not, realize it or not, they're also being oppressed by oppressing people. So you have to save them from that as well. Thanks for clarifying, pushing back, because
I'm just trying to make sense of it.
When I try to make sense of DEI, I think there were some positive things that came out of it. I know the cool thing nowadays is DEI is bad, but I think there were, like, when you see some of the effects of it, there is a lot more CEOs, for example, like you just mentioned. There are more different CEOs of different backgrounds and genders or whatever. But I think what happened with DEI was that there was an academization of some horrible trait in human beings related to hate or racism. And I think they overcomplicated it. Something while combating something simple, an awful trait in human beings, they try to not only create academic language around it, but also a framework to understand why it's happening.
Yeah.
Whereas this problem is prevalent all around the world, irrespective of whether colonialism existed or not, or whether there was any form of white supremacist institutional racism or not. So they created a level of framework where it didn't need to exist. Whereas if they just talked about not being discriminatory, talked against racism, and just honed in on these inherent problems within human beings and tried to combat that, I think there wouldn't have been as much of a problem. What do you think?
Why do you think it was a problem?
What was?
The pushback on DEI. Why?
Because I think, well, first of all, there was I don't think many people had a problem with it until their children were being taught about being trans, and there was an obfuscation of what gender means.
Yeah.
There was the idea that, for example, a lot of companies now, because the shift is away from DEI, they're just focusing their HR trainings with their employees on ageism and not being discriminatory towards age. Yeah. But even then, when you look at that, well, there's problems with there are certain reasons why we, as a hiring manager, will look at someone's age and say, you know what, he doesn't come with enough experience. That's not discriminatory, but according to your language, you're looking at someone's level of age as discriminatory. So when you think about it in that lens, and you're seeing,
and also, sorry to cut you off, it makes people overcompensate too, because they know that someone's more qualified. I've seen this happen before, but because they don't want to be the person who's discriminating age or because somebody's sexuality, they have to choose that person in order to be in good terms, right?
Yeah, and I think the pinnacle happened. There's many layers of why there were problems, but the straw that broke the camel's back was basically you teaching children about some of the weird stuff around the queer culture, right?
Okay.
And I think that in itself was just pushing it way too far, because parents have that right on like what those sensitive subjects are related to parenthood and how you want your child to be raised. The government and its institutions should not be teaching this stuff to your kids. But there's other things related to just critical race theory and that whole postmodern world that it kind of emanated from, where it doesn't respect wisdom. It doesn't respect inherited knowledge that came through generations. One of the popular shows that came out around about 10 years ago, I think, Legend of Korra, which was a sequel of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And there's a scene or a moment in that episode where she has to make a decision because these avatars are inheriting knowledge from one after another, where she has to blow apart all the previous avatars that she's inheriting knowledge from. That was a postmodern personified. That moment where that character is electing to kill off all the previous avatars that she's inheriting knowledge from so that she can create her own new legacy. That was like, wow, that is postmodernism 101 right there. And so when you see some of those things, those are even bigger problems than, I would say, the queer education and stuff like that. When you don't respect knowledge and it's the tradition and the effort that it took from every civilization all across the world to pass knowledge down to us and say that your experience is new, your lived experience is your experience, and it doesn't matter what other people say about it, about against it, as long as your lived experience is that is truth.
Yeah.
And so when you come across that, you're like, wow, you in effect, by using this language about lived experience and other people's say doesn't have anything to do with it, you're in effect, you've blown apart objectivity, you've blown apart truth, you've blown apart the rigorous effort that it takes to learn things and experience new things. So what do you have to say about that, Adeel?
I think that's a valid point. I think when I was in my studies of this, right, and a lot of my PhD studies were in these classes, right, like racism, disability studies, et cetera, feminism, all this, and LGBTQ in education, right. And so what I noticed a trend was it was void of mentioning God 98% of the time. religion was mentioned only if they're critiquing kind of conservative, or they'll have like maybe one line about there's anti-Muslim stuff, there's anti-Jewish stuff, but there was like no mention on religious diversity. That was a big problem that we had there, right? It was like you have all these kind of inclusivity, but you don't mention religious stuff. Right?
Was that acknowledged?
I mean, I brought it up each time out, every class, every professor, I brought it up. But
do you think you were kind of weird for
what was the
bringing that up, or
response?
extreme or something?
I don't remember the response. They probably just nodded. Like, what did they say?
yeah,
It's true. You can't argue with it.
Adeel, you were heard.
You can't argue with it. It's like
You were heard.
so all the books you're giving us, they're not mentioning it. That's like,
I see
keep saying
you,
it.
Adeel. I hear you.
So that's
And then keep
Your
moving.
experience is valid. Your lived experience.
so. I think the mentality is that like what we've been taught has been censored and packaged in a way that it's not inclusive of the indigenous and minority peoples. So that's the pushback to that.
I see.
Right. So I have some friends of mine who are in the Dallas area and near Irving, and and so they say that and one of the people in the family of the couple is of African descent, right? And so she mentions that like in the school system there, they're trying to erase Black history in the books in the Texas public school systems. Like, they're trying to like hide and underneath the thing, and they're trying to introduce like if you donate $1, we'll put "In God We Trust" onto the each classroom. So this idea is pushing like when we say like this was tradition and this was how things were, like it was tradition for whom and how things were for whom, right? So that's kind of the pushback there. So I think there needs to be maybe a balance, right? It's almost like how we critique masajid in the Muslim community now. It's like, man, these uncles and aunties, hey, but they also built the masajid that you're going to every day.
Yeah.
Right? They also built these Islamic organizations that have now created all these things. Like we have to give them credit if we're also going to critique them.
Yeah.
It's like a yes and. Like our parents, they're whack sometimes, but also they've done a lot good for us too. We have to give them, give them their fair share as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you find that balance.
So it goes back to your point earlier about the whole narrative, like who's shaping the narratives on both sides.
Yeah.
And we're not at the table, or even, whether or not we should be is another story, but like we're not there, right?
Yep.
So like you got the right wing, the conservatives. So, that we would think, okay, we're aligned with them naturally. But to your point, it's like, yeah, like it doesn't make no sense what you're saying to like remove Black history from the education system. That's
Right.
stupid.
Yeah.
The evangelical movement in America, the political evangelical movement, wants Jesus to come back.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're supporting Israel. So they're Christian Zionist.
Yeah.
So they build the temple, rebuild the temple again. Jesus is going to come back, and then he's going to kill everybody else who's not a believer of Jesus, right? So we don't ascribe to this kind of bananas, right? Philosophy, whatever this is, democracy, whatever this is. We don't ascribe to that, right? So we can't say we're fully conservative, we're fully progressive either.
Yeah.
We're just kind of like chilling in the back, like looking at them and saying, well, how can we maintain our Islamic and Muslim identity in all this chaos?
So with that being said, where are you
Caught in
making
the
Hijra to?
I'm actually working on a blog article about the.
Are you?
Yeah, blog article on like top 10 Hijra places to go to.
Because I think we were having this. I was, the other day it was Eid, right? Eid Mubarak, by the way. I don't think we said Eid Mubarak, did we?
Eid Mubarak, yeah, we all hugs. We had hugs.
We had
No,
hugs.
I don't know if it's on the show.
And we
though.
got a cake too.
Oh, Eid Mubarak, everybody.
Okay,
Eid
everybody.
Mubarak.
Just in
Eid
case.
Mubarak.
It's their day of Eid. But like the thing of it is that we were up in the North Burbs, really like nice suburb, on Friday night.
Yeah.
And my wife takes the kids on a walk, and my mother-in-law freaks out. She's like, "Why'd you go on a walk? Nowhere's safe in America." Blah 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 blah. And all this stuff. And then you hear all this stuff. Yeah, crime is under rampage. Like, doesn't Allah say that the earth of Allah is vast?
Vast, yeah.
So what are we
tough,
like?
man.
Why are we?
Well, Allah says the earth is vast, and it is, and or I think one of that comes from the one of the angels will say like, you didn't you have anywhere to go?
أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً. It wasn't Allah's earth very fast to hajiru fiha, that you can go migrate to it. But that's in the context of if somebody's oppressive over you, not allowing you to practice your religion, then Allah is saying, then He's not allowing you to do bare minimum of your Islam. Then Allah is saying, look, Allah created the earth, is vast. You can go somewhere else too, right? There's a context to that. That doesn't mean you should be passive either. You have to put everything in perspective. It doesn't mean like, oh, okay, the Israelis want us to leave and Egypt should absorb us and we should just go somewhere else. Allah's not referring to that either, right? There's obviously nuances to all of that.
Yeah. Devon is Hijra, bro. How is Devon not Hijra? I was there yesterday. I was like, I'm definitely in Pakistan right now.
Bro, no. If you go to the UK, go to Luton or
Birmingham. I was in the UK. Whitechapel?
Birmingham, Manchester.
Yeah, Whitechapel
is called Whitechapel?
It's called Whitechapel. So it's a Bengal. So I was there. You guys remember Mizan Bhai? Sim remembers the show. So I was at we were about to go to East London Mosque and we're at a restaurant. I'm like, yo, Mizan Bhai, I actually feel bad for Whitey. I actually wanted to interview one of these skinheads, like hooligans. Like, yo, bro, I feel you, man. We showed up here and we destroyed this joint.
Destroyed this joint, didn't make it better.
It's a dump. Like, smells like Dhaka up in here, bro.
What does Dhaka smell like?
It has a unique smell that, as a native, as someone who, I was born there. I have an appreciation for, but I can't expect Whitey to be down with it.
That's also interesting for the gentrification of spaces, right?
Yeah.
Like East is usually in different parts of the world, like the diverse and also lower economic areas.
Yeah.
East London, East Berlin, East Jerusalem.
That's crazy.
You see the trend there.
East Pakistan.
I don't know, man. I ain't going there, bro. I ain't going there, bro. Well, I left candles today.
Witty guy. But yeah, man, what else, dude? What else you got for us other than the blog? I mean, can I get, before we conclude, I don't know if you guys want, but yeah. I want to get a little teaser on the blog of the places of Hijra, because I've been looking at just places, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard question, right? I mean, there's
what's your number one right now?
Qatar. He looks like Qatar.
Wait. I mean, I'm building into it. Okay.
Okay.
There's deeper questions to answer, right? So it's like on Maheen's point about just like our taxes, where are taxes going in America? Like, even if you work in say you have an American job, but you live in Qatar or Oman or Turkey, right? You still pay taxes in America, right? And those taxes are going to the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex, right? Their bombs are going over, and a lot of them are hitting Muslim majority lands and Muslim people.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, and so like, are we going to be asked for that? About that on Yom Al-Qiyamah? Like, that's a real question to ask ourselves, right? Like,
my pops are going to be asked. He's the one that brought me here.
Anyways, bro, sorry. Go on. Filter, alhamdulillah. The cool thing about him is after 10 years, the filter hasn't changed. So that's awesome to have you back, bro. Welcome back, bro. But anyways, go ahead.
No, but it's a real question to ask, right? I mean, you know, and you have like our family, alhamdulillah, proudly supports BDS. Like, we proudly support the boycott, divestment, and sanctions. As much, not like, I mean, we do it a lot, even more than just like the Starbucks, McDonald's, and we look at things, you know. But end of the day, like, how much my taxes going, and how much is my, you know?
Yeah, it's unavoidable,
right? And so it's like, what do I, you know? How do you? And I've talked to Palestinians about this too. I was like, how do y'all live here? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? You know, even me, like, so the other reasons, right? There's a topics about kids in public school. Public schools now get shut up. Like, you know,
I think the safety thing is really the thing that on my mind.
It's safety thing, right?
Is the thing that you're concerned about is that, like, my mother-in-law, I mean, I in some jest, she was a little...
Just say some lady. Don't keep saying your mother-in-law, bro.
No, she was talking about, you know, like, hey, she was worried about the kids, like, safety, some neighborhood. I'm like, that's a little egregious. But in general, America is not a safe place.
Yeah. He's throwing everybody under the bus.
You go to, like, Singapore, bro.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is a reality,
or
right?
Malaysia.
Safety is a reality. Yeah. Economic, like, ethics is a reality, right? Our children's identity is a reality. Now, people are getting mad at me for saying this, but there is a show called Rami on Hulu, and it has some really problematic stuff on it, right? So I don't recommend...
Sheikh Amr's an expert in Rami, by the way.
I don't recommend people watching it, but people in my position have to...
Sheikh Rami.
But there is a scene in Rami where Rami is listening to a tape that his grandfather recorded for his father, for Rami's father.
Yeah.
Do not let your kids go to America. they're going to be confused. They're not going to know who they are. And Rami is like, that's me. I'm confused. I don't know who I am. He's right. And he goes to Egypt to go find his
grandfather,
granddad, right? And all weird stuff happens there too. But like, so again, it's also an argument against your Hijra argument, but in a way, but
it exactly is it's an argument for Hijra. Well, it is
for and against, right?
Yeah, in a way.
What he does there with the Cairo American University. So anyways, so there is so there are arguments to make Hijra, right? There's definitely there. It used to be popular, remember, in like the 90s, early 2000s. That was a big thing about Hijra. When are you going to go to Hijra? Da, 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 da. But it's like, it's coming back. People are thinking about it again, right? And it's very valid. So, but again, if you apply this this DEI framework into the Muslim majority countries, you have problems there too. Yeah. If I go to a Khaliji Gulf country, I, as a South Asian, right, descent person, am seen as less labor class and, you know, whatever else, right? My Americanness will upgrade me to an extent, I guess, but that's going to be a problem I'm facing there, right? So then Turkey becomes an option there that's like, okay, they love Pakistanis, probably Bengalis too, because it's like close enough, but like it's like a thing because it helped them in the war. The Pakistan helped them in the war a long time ago, and so that's why they.
Oh, I thought because Pakistanis gave them most total viewership.
It's like a continuous love from that.
That's contemporary.
It was wartime support.
Okay.
They like sing. They have like songs on their television. Jive, Pakistan, Pakistan. Like that's like a thing. So. That's one option, right? Oman is another great option. Malaysia is another great option, right? Even more affordable is Indonesia as another option, right? So there's different options that are there for Muslims to make Hijra too. If they're very rich, they can go to Maldives. Why not? You know, but like, you know, it's thinking about.
The Maldives is going to go underwater soon. That's a sinking property.
No.
And then,
literally.
By the way, I know briefly. I don't think DEI is going away. President Trump's put it away now. The Democrats will come back at some point. It'll come back.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It ain't dead.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But as far as the Hijra thing is concerned, sorry. So, I mean, I think if you lived in the Muslim world too, look, man, like, what we call racism here and, like, prejudice and, like, all of the, if you want to say everything related to somebody's identity, their skin color and all that, it's over there times 100 in some places, right? So what we have here in America, we have a very, like, ironed out version of society, but it's all still embedded within. Everybody judges. Everybody, it's almost unavoidable, which is why it's a test and it's a fitna, especially for believers to override that with their belief. You know what I'm saying? But the dilemma I think that we're going to face anywhere we go is we shouldn't ever have the mindset that I'm going to do hijrah and it's going to be like I'm walking around the Sahaba.
Yeah,
it's gonna be like, I'm a heaven on earth. No, it's never gonna be that way.
Glamorize it.
We cannot. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm saying I see brothers entice other brothers to move and like, oh, life is amazing, it's beautiful. No, it's not, bro. Life is not meant to be. No matter how much fun you have in life, like if you can imagine the most fun you ever had in life, the thing that tarnishes that fun for you is you know that it's about to end. So there's no true happiness.
Yeah,
I don't mean to be like a downer, but
what about your village in Mauritania? Is that the downfall there is because we're so dunya oriented here that's going to make us break?
No, but look over there now. They have like technology there. Everybody has smartphones. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like everything changes. You know what I'm saying? It's just they tried very long to keep a lot of stuff out, but you can't. But over there, there's tribes there. Like Mauritania is a very tribal society, right? And you have tribalism there too. Not everybody's like at a caliber, no matter how long and vetted they are as students of knowledge. Everybody has this ingrained behavior that's come. All of us have that, right? We have to obviously continue to try to fight it, but if you're surrounded, like I'll give you a small example. If you're surrounded, Mauritania is surrounded by Mauritanis all the time, right? And then somebody different comes in, they don't even know what racism is, but they're just going to be treating the person differently. They never heard the word racism, right? But they're naturally, in a sense, if they're not given proper culture of like, hey, you have a person coming here, you got to act like this. Obviously, it can be very nice to them. I remember this. I'm not exaggerating this. There was an Irish brother that was with us. I think it was Abdus Salam. This guy, whiter than white, red hair, converted maybe like 4 or 5 years ago before he came to Mauritania. I'm telling you, this guy got sunburned when he was in Mauritania, okay? the Mauritanians were afraid of him and thought he was a ghost or something because they'd never seen a white dude with sunburn. So he was forced to like cover, and cover his whole face too, because he went to the masjid. People are looking at him in prayer, bro. It was like that, right? So the reason I'm saying this is, look, brothers and sisters have to realize hijrah. Like, I'm glad you mentioned the caveat is, where's our money going to? You're doing it for a certain reason, not because your life is going to be drastically easier. Because if you want ease, America's the place. If you want like ease, like
until you get shot.
No, dude. Okay, you get shot, but not compared to like war zones, right? But what I'm saying is, if you live in like Oak Brook, if you live in like nice places, if you don't live in the ghetto, you're most likely not going to get shot. Like what's that?
Oak Brook, that a mall, Oak Brook Mall had that shooting. Remember?
There was a shooting. Yes, I mean, whatever, dude. You know what I'm saying? But look, if we're trying to compare, like, the ease that people have of life here, compared to like. The third world, bro. Like if you've seen ghettos here and you like look at third world poverty, it's a whole different world. It's a completely different world, right? And I think that's why you have to be principle based, like you said. Like, where's our money going, and how are we going to stand in front of Allah? That's real, right? Then the transition becomes easier because you're doing it for a purpose, not because I'm living around Muslims and my Islam's going to flourish and my kids are going to be the best Muslims. No, like the same, haram that people do here, people do over there too, right? So I think as long as you put that in perspective, it has to be very principle based, right? Which is I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're not going there just.
But Sheikh, let me ask you a question.
But Sheikh,
Arthur Richards, I don't know if you know, I had him on my show once. He told me that according to like most of the madahib, the hijrah to Darul Islam, and Darul Islam is just where the 5 pillars are established, is wajib.
No, that's definitely an opinion, right? Like, look, if you have to travel, but the problem is there is no Darul Islam, right? In this world, it happens to be that people found more economic prosperity.
You're saying there is no Darul Islam. He's saying the definition that people are providing is because people are saying that Darul Islam at a minimum is the 5 prayers are established.
No, I understand that
by the state.
I understand that, right? And obviously, look, there's probably like 6 different opinions of what's considered Darul Islam.
Okay,
right? And one of them, like the loosest that you mentioned, is that you could practice Islam, your 5 pillars. Hajj is easy for you, zakat is facilitated for you, then you're living in Darul Islam, right? That's fine. But now comes like, okay, you can call something Darul Islam, but if you say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah ordered us to speak truth if we see something happening, and if we do that, we get imprisoned, go to jail and tortured, and our family never sees us, which happens in the Muslim world, not as much as it is now. It's more topic based now, but like between the 50s and like the late 90s, early 2000s, why did everybody rush to get out of their countries? Number one, economic freedom. They thought that they were going to get paid much better, take care of their families, like their needs that they saw for their future generation. Even as being Muslims, they didn't feel met, even though they're surrounded by Muslims. So they had to go to a different place where at least they can breathe. They don't have to worry about so many other things, right? And they could still hold on to Islam to a certain degree, right? So that thing of like 5 pillars are being established and it's fought for everyone to go, I don't agree with that, to be honest with you, because those are just ritualistic things that defines you as the whole summarization of a million things. This is what a believer is: Salah, Shahada, Zakat, Salat, Som, Hajj, right? And that's like, as far as fiqh is concerned, that's like the smallest volume, if you want to call it, right? Everything else is volumes and volumes, right? So I get that, I get that sentiment, but again, we can't be deceiving people. And I'm not saying any of us are doing this here, alhamdulillah. You can't just say you're going to go to Muslim countries.
I've asked you
your Islam is going to be awesome.
The reason they say they don't publicize this, if they say hijrah is wajib, they actually said, like, I agree with it. But they say if we say it, the problem is it's not pragmatic for people. Because then you'll be like, oh, you have to do this. And be like, oh, crap, what do I do? It puts people in a bind.
Yeah.
And that's why I've heard it's not being publicized.
That's interesting.
Well, you have a lot of dependents over here. And one of the reasons why people even come over here is because they need to help people back home. So going back home, you're not able to help the people you came here to begin with. So what kind of...
There's a lot of people that come here, save up money, they live very, like, almost poor, and they send a lot of money back home too. Yeah.
Look, it's one thing if you're alone here, you don't have a family, and no one depending on you. Sure, hijrah is a great option for you. Majority of us, the vast majority of us, have strong obligations, not just a responsibility, obligations towards the people under our care.
Yeah.
And like people can rabble rouse about hijrah all they want till they're blue in the face, but when you have people depending on you,
Yeah, it's different.
it's a whole nother world. Like it's plan for hijrah and during retirement. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But I love the idea though, man. So are we going to get what's at least their top 5 or top
No,
2?
I mean I gave y'all some names, right?
Okay, all right. We're just gonna have to wait.
That's what we have. I think one thing I want to mention about this topic was there was this Jewish ethnographer who comes and just studies Jewish people. That's like his thing, right? And he was speaking to a Muslim audience, and he's like, I was in the audience. He just comes in there. First thing he says, like a John Wayne Western. He says, if you want, and I can't get out of my head, if you want your kids to be Muslim, to stay Muslim, to marry Muslims, then you live in Muslim neighborhoods. You put them in Muslim schools. You send them to college with big Muslim populations and have imams and whatever else there, young professionals in the area. Otherwise, they're gone.
He's right.
They're gone.
I told
He says, and another woman, she was from one of the seminaries. She came and spoke. She said, we Jews wanted to become white. We aspired to become white. And now she's like, careful what you wish for, because now half of our community marries outside. Right. And it's powerful, man.
Yeah, that's why I tell people,
Hijra, man.
Look,
That's it.
we joke about it, but it's true. Like, if you're in America, you can't go to the UK, or you have to gravitate towards regions or areas where there's a lot of Muslims. In this section, Adeel, that you're in, of the suburbs, me and my cousin went through all the mosques here. There's almost 25 mosques within a 5 to 10 mile radius. Where this is not even Chicago. This is not Chicago. We're talking about a sliver of Chicago, the western suburbs.
Yeah, the greater Chicagoland area.
Yeah, it's about 5 to 10 mile square miles. 25 mosques. Mind blowing.
Yeah, and with that comes education.
And these aren't small mosques. These aren't like little huts. These are good sized mosques.
They have seminaries too. And the reason why that's important is if you don't live in a Muslim populated area, look, now technology is different. You can learn a lot from YouTube or whatever. But when you don't have an environment of Muslims where a lot of teaching happens through osmosis and obviously through a lot of passive learning and just being around Muslims and the culture, you have I've known Muslims that grown up in like different parts of the United States where they were the only Muslim in town. Yeah. Like, there's obviously advantages to that if they hold on to Islam because they have that need to hold on to it. But look at the educational level they have of Islam. Look at the culturing they have of Islam. Look at what they find weird, and look what there's pros and cons, but the pros are definitely living around as many Muslims, even if you disagree with them, bro. Yeah. Like I go to some masjids where a lot of ways they conduct themselves, like fighting over if the takbirat of tashriq should be only once or 3 times, and if somebody reads it like they're starting the second one and they're only supposed to read it once, then they all start looking at that person. I've been in those masjids, bro, but guess what? I love it, dude, compared to living anywhere else. I wouldn't change that for the world, bro.
There's he mentioned that Prophet mentions that it's better to mix with the people and be annoyed with them with annoying than to be by yourself. That's very powerful.
Very powerful. Yes, sir.
Brothers, that's our show for this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. This was the impromptu show that we just literally planned yesterday. We thought Adeel was going to be out and we were going to have a show. But thank you so much, Adeel, for adjusting
the vest and the cake.
Adeel adjusted his schedule and said, you know what, let's just make this happen. Thank you so much, brother, for coming through. And
thank you for saving our episode,
time
bro.
for us.
Thank you for having us.
And Maheen, thank you for coming by, bro.
Yeah, Maheen.
We got to do this more often. I'm not going to lie, I kind of miss you. I'm getting a little emotional, but I'm going to stop.
Yeah, I'll try to come through. Cause I felt like I was overdue.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about politics. So all the shows are about politics these days, and I'm like, I don't know anything about politics. But then, like, I saw Adeel was going to be through. I'm like, I hit up Sim. I'm like, you got space for one more?
Yes, of course, dude. Heck yeah.
All right, brothers. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
That's our show.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak to you all.
I want their leader brought here. I want him brought to me. I want the revolution crushed.